Thank you.
All right, and so just for those that are on the call and heard that notification, so we're going to get going. So this meeting is being recorded just so we can accurately capture your comments and feedback. So just know that we are recording. And so I'll hand it over to Smita to kick us off.
All right, good evening, everyone. It is 5:31 now. Welcome to the first public meeting for Whitney Road Complete Street project. We started this project in December of 2022, and we have completed our initial planning process. We have prepared some concepts for improvement for Whitney Road, which we will be presenting to you all today. So thank you for joining us. So our agenda for today, our plan is to talk a little bit about the project, give you a background on the project, walk through the steps that we have completed so far. The main part of today's presentation is focused on the concepts that we have developed. So we have come up with a few options for improvement, which we would be sharing with you all today. We would like to know your thoughts on these, and based on what we hear from you today, we will refine these options and develop a preferred option for improvement for Whitney Road, which we will bring back to you and present to you at a second public meeting for this project in April. So that's basically our plan for today. Before we start with the main presentation, I'd also like to introduce our team. So I'll start with my introduction. My name is Smita. I work as a principal planner with Pinellas County's Housing and Community Development. I am the project lead for this project. We also have a team from Renaissance Planning who's helping us with the project. Renaissance Planning is our consultant who's working on this project. So we have Frank and Amanda from Renaissance team who would be presenting to us today. Frank is the managing principal for Renaissance Planning, and Amanda is the project lead for this project from the Renaissance side. Apart from that, we have a small group of us, a small team, a multi-jurisdictional team that has been working with us since December. This includes staff from Pinellas County's Public Works Department. We have staff from the City of Largo and also Forward Pinellas. Can you move on to the next slide?
Right. So before I hand it back to Smita, I just wanted to go over some online etiquette. So I know over the last couple of years, we've all gotten really good at online virtual engagement, but just as a friendly reminder, there may be occasional troubleshooting, and if you need help, just feel free to reach out into the chat. And so my colleagues, Zach and Chase, will be monitoring that during the duration of this meeting. Please be aware of your mic and remain muted unless we ask you to come off mute. Whenever you are speaking, please just announce your name just so we know who's speaking. If you don't have your video on, like I mentioned earlier, video is optional, but if you want to turn it on, feel free. Utilize the chat box for questions, comments, troubleshooting, and then we will take note of these and address the questions and comments at the end of the presentation. And just be mindful at the end of the presentation if you are speaking, and just so that we have enough time to get to everyone. All right, and with that, I will hand it back over to Smita to just go over some project overview.
Thank you, Amanda. So before we start with the main part of the presentation, a little bit about the project. The Whitney Road Complete Street project, it focuses on a 1.5-mile stretch of road, Whitney Road, that extends from US 19 to Bolesta. As we all know, this is a two-lane undivided road that acts as a major east-west connector for residents and businesses around this area. There are a few ongoing projects within the study area. Can you move on to the next slide? So there are a few ongoing projects. We have the Duke Energy Trail project that intersects Whitney Road. We also have the Whitney Road Wolford Road intersection improvements project. Both these projects are being led by Pinellas County's Public Works Department. The Wolford Road project extends from North Oak Street to Hidden Springs. This project precedes our project, so this was started a while ago. So we've already completed the public outreach for this and identified the improvements for this stretch. Since this project is ahead of us and the improvements have already been identified, for the purpose of our project, we will be focusing on the rest of the corridor that is basically west of North Oak Street and east of Hidden Springs. I know there's a lot of interest in this project, and we have received a number of emails regarding this project. So if you have any questions, we can take them at the end of the presentation. Scott Baird, who is the project lead for this project, is with us today. He's also a part of our team, so he's helping us with our project too. You can reach out to him also through email. We will add his email in the chat. Can you move on to the next slide? All right, so Whitney Road, the intent of our project, the Whitney Road Complete Street project, is to identify multimodal improvements for Whitney Road, which means identifying improvements that will improve safety and comfort for pedestrians, bicyclists, and people who drive on Whitney Road. This is not a road widening project. The improvements that we identify will be based on the right of way that we know as of today. Also, the timeframe for the project ends in June. So by the end of June, our intent is to develop concept drawings, not engineering drawings. So we'll be developing concepts for improvement, which will then help us advance towards engineering drawings. However, the development of engineering drawings would happen beyond the scope of this project. Can you move on to the next slide? A few more things. This project was made possible through a complete street grant that we received from Forward Pinless. Also, as you know, Whitney Road crosses more than one jurisdiction. Therefore, this project is a collaborative effort between Pinellas County and the city of Largo. I think that brings me to the end of my part of the presentation. And so I'll hand it over to Amanda, who will walk you through the steps that we have completed so far and the steps that led us to the concepts that we'd be discussing with you today. So thank you.
And I realized I was on mute, so yeah, so now we'll jump into where we're at with this project. So there have been a couple ongoing efforts since we initiated this over the last couple of months. And so there was an online survey where we gathered key concerns from residents and business owners in the area. And with that survey, we received over 250 responses. So thank you if you did fill out that survey. In conjunction with the online survey, we had an online wiki map. And for those of you that are not aware of what the wiki map is or did not get a chance to complete it, this is an online mapping tool that lets you kind of pinpoint exact places where you have a concern or an issue, and we will provide this link at the end. The wiki map will remain open for the duration of this project, which is through June 2023. And so again, just another place to kind of capture and take a look at some feedback that other folks have been providing. In addition to these two items, on our side with our team, we completed an existing conditions data analysis. So really diving deep into different sorts of data sets to look at who lives here, who works here, what are the travel patterns, what are the main destinations and origins within the area. In addition to that, I'm not sure if you guys saw us, but we were out there one day completing a walking audit. So our full team that Smith mentioned went out to the corridor, walked it all the way up and down from US 19 to Ballesta Road, just so we could get a better feel and understanding of the corridor. And based on all four of these inputs, we have developed the draft alternatives that we will be presenting here today. So these concepts incorporate feedback that you all gave us, as well as some factors from our data analysis and our own personal walking audit that we thought would be important to incorporate. So I'll get into the existing conditions now. And so with the existing conditions, again, this meeting is focused on presenting the concepts to you all. So we didn't want to spend a lot of time going over the existing conditions and really get into the nitty-gritty of the data analysis in very technical terms. However, we do have a audio video presentation that is available on YouTube. So we'll drop the link in the chat, but if you also just type in Renaissance Planning Whitney Road, it should come up, however you want to get to it, but we will provide the link to that. And so that's about I think it's an 11 or 12 minute video presentation. So it'll run through everything that I just mentioned as far as the different census and demographic data, the travel patterns, and it has some really cool visuals of, where amongst the corridor people are traveling and the times of day they're traveling. So we'll highlight some of those over the next couple of slides, but if you're interested in that, please take a look at that. And if you, after you watch that and you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us so we can clarify anything. So some of the key takeaways, so based off the all of the inputs that we received, so the online survey, wiki map, our data analysis, and the walking audit, these are just some things that we wanted to call out. So as far as the population and who lives in this area, the area is predominantly white, non-Hispanic. Household income is about $65,000. And major employers in the area are Tech Data near Datsco Park, and then major retailers along US 19 like Publix and other big box stores that are in that area. As far as current travel conditions and patterns, based off the existing roadway volumes, the roadway configuration as is with 2 lanes meets the travel demand existing in the future for this corridor. And as was mentioned earlier, this is not a roadway widening project, and nor do we feel that this needs to be a roadway widening project, which is why we're focusing on multimodal improvements. So vehicular and non-motorized volumes. So when I say non-motorized, I mean bicyclists, pedestrians. Those volumes tend to be the highest west of 58th Street and kind of teeter off towards the east side. The peak travel times within the period, not surprising to anybody that lives in this corridor, are around 7 a.m. and 3 p.m. And so based off the surveys and the feedback that we received, many of the roadway users that utilize this corridor live within 2 miles of Whitney Road, which shows that, you know, there is a potential to shift some automobile trips to multimodal trips, so walking or biking. Largo, Datsco Park, and the retail places along US 19 are some of the major key destinations within the corridor. And then we also took a look at crash analysis data from the years 2018 through 2022. And so this is typical to review crash data over a 5-year period. And so on Whitney Road, within that 5-year period, there were 48 crashes, 0 fatal crashes, 1 severe injury crash. And so the most prevalent type of crash along this roadway was rear end crashes. The next most common crash type was hitting fixed objects, followed by side swipes. And so during this analysis period, there was also 3 bicycle crashes and there were 0 pedestrian crashes. And so getting into what we observed and some of the comments that we received. So again, you know, depending on the modes of traffic, while I just said that, you know, based on data analysis, so that's coming from like the Bluetooth on your phones and tracking that data, but based on the survey of people who filled it out, you know, we kind of got a couple different responses. So drivers tend to travel the western end of Whitney Road. Pedestrians travel more so the area between the, you know, future Pinellas Trail and the Wolford Road section, so kind of in the middle. And bicyclists uniformly use the corridor. So some of the key concerns were bicycle and pedestrian safety and speeding, especially near 62nd Street. And so you'll see the bar chart on the bottom, and that's kind of a overall tally of the different items that we heard comments on, and, you know, kind of how many times we heard comments that fit into these different categories. So we had appearance, aesthetics, mentions of crosswalks, intersections, landscaping, lighting, parking, and then you can see the 2 on the right are safety and sidewalks. And these were some of the improvements that some people suggested and shared. And so we had some comments that said, you know, maybe there should be more speed limit signs, more additional police enforcement. There were suggestions for potentially, you know, a buffered or continuous sidewalk, bicycle lanes, restoring right turn lanes from the frontage road onto Whitney Road, crosswalks, potential flashing pedestrian beacons, and a median. And so these are just some pictures of us out on our walking audit. So we had a really good group, and we even had the fire station attendees. I think we had probably like 6 of them out there. And then I'm not sure if you're on this call, but this nice gentleman in the second to the right photo in the tan, he kind of just found us at Datsco Park and decided to tag along. So it was really great talking to him, and he was able to join us on our walking audit. And so combining everything put together, we compiled this map showing the existing sidewalks, sidewalk gaps, which are the kind of dark purple color. The green are places where we saw opportunities based on the feedback that we received, and red are the areas where there are concerns. And so you can kind of see there's a cluster of these different concerns, again, mostly related to safety, pedestrian crossings, some areas of speeding. And so you also will notice that there is a cluster of concerns around the Wolford Road intersection. And so we did want to address that. We talked about it earlier, but again, just kind of overlaying the Whitney Road and Wolford Road intersection improvement, and just showing that that project will address the majority of the concerns that were identified in that area. And so a couple slides down, Frank will get into some of the specifics of the Wolford Road project. And then again, as mentioned, we do have Scott on the line. So if you have any specific questions, he can answer those via the chat, or we will give you his email so you can reach out to him directly. And so with that, I'll hand it over to Frank to talk about our potential concepts for Whitney Road.
Okay, thanks, Amanda, and good evening, everyone. So I'll go over some of the concepts that we've come up with for Whitney Road. Next slide. And just to orient you to the approximate usable right-of-way that we're working with. So it gets, the main constraint is it gets down to about 40 feet between the Pinellas Trail and the end of the Wolford Road intersection project. And so the Wolford Road, and I'll show you the typical section on the Wolford Road project, but it is, it'll go all the way to Oak Street. The actual infrastructure in terms of the sidewalks and paved shoulders, and I'll show you that. But it's also going to cover some of the ditches south of Whitney Road here. That will put pipe infrastructure and it'll be covered, which gives it more room to extend those sidewalks. Next slide. And so this is kind of pointing out some of those constraints. There's a real steep grade, as I'm sure if you've driven down Whitney Road or walked down Whitney Road, you've seen the ditch on the south side of the road. And there's fairly steep grade. So that improvement project will take care of some of that all the way up to Sapphire Road. There's also utility constraints, or mainly to the west of the corridor. But those are things that I think we can work around. And then the other thing that we've observed is that there's sometimes the parking at the park is at capacity, and visitors are parking on the road. And so that's just something that we need to be aware of and figure out, strategies to mitigate some of that. Next slide. Okay, so this is the planned cross section for it's more than an intersection. It's the area that's going to be improved. It'll go to 11-foot lanes, as you can see here, with a 5-foot paved shoulder that could accommodate bicyclists, and then a 3-foot unpaved shoulder, which will serve as that'll be a swale. So it'll be a grass swale before the sidewalk, but the sidewalk is separated from the street. And as we mentioned earlier, permitting is underway and construction is expected to begin in the fall. Next slide, Amanda. Okay, the existing, it varies a little bit, but the existing typical roadway section in the corridor is 10-foot travel lanes at varying widths of the shoulders, and the sidewalks are fairly narrow. Next slide. So we've just kind of identified just alternative concepts for the corridor. And so this is the typical section for the improvement project that is occurring, scheduled to begin in the fall. And this concept just extends this typical section throughout the corridor, with the 11-foot travel lanes and the 5-foot paved shoulders and 5-foot sidewalks. And so this is something that that could be implemented throughout the corridor. There's one constraint though, and I'll talk about that later in one of the other alternatives. Next slide. The second alternative, concept B, emphasizes bicycle safety a little bit more. And so what it does is separates the bicycle lane from the traffic, from the auto traffic. So it gives it a little bit more safety and comfort for bicyclists on the road. And it's pushed against the 5-foot sidewalk. Next slide. And then the next one is the pedestrian focus. So it moves the bicycle lanes back, adjacent to the vehicular lanes on the 5-foot shoulder, and then uses the 3-foot median or grass shoulder for plantings or some type of buffer for for pedestrians on the sidewalk. And this is another concept that would be applied maybe as an interim strategy, or I guess it could be a permanent strategy as well. And this would apply between Sapphire Lane and US 19. So as we mentioned, the right of way gets fairly tight, which wouldn't allow for sidewalks on both sides of the road. And so as an interim strategy, on the north side of the road would continue the sidewalk, remove the sidewalk on the south side, or not install it, until potentially that the ditch could be covered like it will be east of Sapphire Road. And so once the ditch is covered, then that kind of gives you more right of way to implement these other concepts. But in the interim, this is a strategy that might be able to be implemented, where you just have the sidewalk on one side of the road, have good pedestrian crossing treatments. So pedestrians could cross the street to get to the sidewalk. But we do think it's really important to connect with the trail. And so this is kind of an interim strategy, perhaps.
All right, and we're doing good on time, so I do just want to check in. So the next portion of this presentation will be giving you a chance to vote and kind of give us some feedback on which of these concepts that you're feeling most strongly about. We will also have an opportunity towards the end to just give us any other comments and sort of feedback on things you presented. But I guess just before we go to the voting and I explain how to do that on the screen, do we want to open it up for potential questions? Okay, so if you have any questions or want me to flip back to a specific concept and just clarify anything, please let us know in the chat, or if you know how to use the raise your hand feature, feel free to use that as well. And so I'll just give it a couple minutes here to see if there are any specific questions. I see Jill has her hand up. Go ahead, Jill.
Hi. So sure, I have some questions, some concerns. One of them is, and I don't know if this was discussed, right now at Wolford Road, we have a stop sign. Is the stop sign going to stay?
Scott, do you want to go ahead and address your project?
Yes. Yeah. The Wolford Road, Whitney Road intersection is going to be realigned to a T, and it will be a 3-way stop.
Okay, good. Thank you. Thank you very much. We have speeders here, so stopping is important to us. And I do walk it, I do bike it, so I'm pretty active in the neighborhood. One of my other questions, and I'll just share for everyone else on the call, Scott, was I went door to door to neighbors, in a 2-hour time frame this afternoon, trying to encourage everyone to get on the call, because in my conversation that I had with Scott today, the Arbor Trace community, if you will, is about 2 blocks long on Whitney Road. And there's a line of beautiful live oaks. It's the reason many of us bought an Arbor Trace. And so Scott informed me that the plans are currently to tear down most of the live oaks that are there for the purpose of having the, I don't know if it's stormwater pipes or sewer pipes, whatever pipes are being laid into the ravine. And I think that's a big concern for many different reasons that I'd like to have a future opportunity to continue discussions with Pinellas County, City of Largo, Forward Pinellas, whoever it is that we need to talk to. But for beautification purposes, for health purposes, you know, I know the importance of trees, and I know Sterling, the Sterling Tree City is one of the things that City of Largo is really proud of. I'd have to do a little bit more research, but there's a lot of reasons why we would prefer not to have those live oaks that have probably been here for hundreds of years torn down. And I know I'm watching my time, so that's it.
Thank you for paying attention to the etiquette. Yes, we will note that, and we do have it recorded. And so if we do need any follow-up, we can discuss that with Scott. And so now I will turn it over to another Jill. So Jill Lindsay.
Thank you. Kind of piggyback on what Jill said. You know, when you're coming down Whitney and you hit Wolford, y'all specified that it's still going to stand as a three-way stop. Now that road's going to be straightened, so there's not that hook curve right there. Am I to take that correctly? Okay, so you're straightening that out. Cool.
Yes.
My next thing is, as you continue then down on Whitney, you know, it comes into 58th Street. And that is a real, I mean, there has been so many complaints because people don't stop. They do that kind of, they call it the California roll where you peek, you know, it's right where the fire station is. Is that going to be a signal light, or will that continue to be a three-way stop?
So in order to put in a signal that has to be warranted, which basically means that there are certain requirements that need to be in place in order to put in a signal. So at this time, that is not warranted and not something we're looking at. So that would just remain a stop sign.
Okay, and one last question.
Yep.
What is the time frame of this project? Did you say it?
So Wolford Road or the Whitney Road Complete Streets project? Because they're two separate projects.
The Whitney, well, I don't know. How about the first project? When is that going to start and end?
Okay, so with Wolford Road, construction is expected to begin this fall. And then for our Whitney Road Complete Streets project that we're talking about here, this will wrap up documentation in June of this year.
Thank you for your time. Appreciate you.
No problem. All right, and I'm going to take a break from the raised hands and just grab somebody that's in the chat real quick, and then I will come back to you, Doug. So there was a question about how we plan on diverting traffic during possible construction. Scott, are you available to answer this question for your project?
Okay, can you repeat that? Sorry.
How do we plan on diverting traffic during possible construction?
During construction, when we're replacing the box culvert at Long Branch, which is now just on the east side of Wolford. We're extending it and expanding it so the water flows more efficiently. During that construction, we will have the road closed at that location. So folks that are on the east side will have to exit out through US 19. Folks are, I'm sorry, down to 58th Street on the west side, they'll have to go out to 19. Once we get that installed and we start the road reconstruction, we will have some temporary paving so we can allow some single lane access through there.
All right, thank you, Scott. All right, I'm going to grab Doug and Ginger, and then I want to get us back to just looking at the actual concepts, and you guys will all have a chance to provide additional comments and feedback on kind of these, you know, miscellaneous topics that we're talking about that are related to both of the projects. So go ahead, Doug. And you're on mute. I can.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. I just have one quick question. With this project, is there any in the plans for any street lighting on this? Because that's a very dark road.
So yeah, Smitha or Scott. Sorry, I can't see. I can only see so many people talking right now.
So as a part of the improvements that they have identified, we're not including street walks in this. We know there has been, we got a lot of concerns regarding the need for street lights. We also walked this road, so we know that there are large sections where there is no street lights. However, and I'm sharing with you the policy that the county has. The county typically does not do street lights. They do it only rarely. In some cases, they install it, and that's typically when they install it, it's usually for safety concern, and that too at the intersections. So there are some areas within the stretch of Whitney Road where it could be considered as a straight safety concern, and it could be added. But as of now, as I said, the policy is that we typically do not install street lights. If a residential neighborhood needs street lights, what they do is they work with Duke Energy, they create a lighting plan, and then the cost of installing the street lights as well as the maintenance, that's covered by the residents. So that's typically what happens.
Okay.
Thank you.
Great, Ginger?
Hello, everyone. Hi, Smita. Thank you for all of your emails. You're so patient.
Thank you.
This question is probably for Frank. I'm looking for clarification between concept B and concept D. As far as if we were to vote for B, would that happen between Sapphire and US 19? Or could we say we want the Sapphire US 19 portion and we want B for the rest of the roadway? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
So unfortunately, there's not enough right of way to fit all of the street elements and concepts A, B, and C because of the ditch. And until it's covered, you wouldn't be able to implement it. But if it was covered, then you could do any of the concepts all the way to 19. But as an interim kind of strategy until, something might happen there, the concept D just continues the concept A, but removes the sidewalk on the south side of the street. So if we did that, there'd have to be just a plan for good pedestrian crossings, to get to the north side of the street, and then use a sidewalk to get to the trail. It's just a small section, so.
Frank, can you clarify the section that you're referring to where A, B, and C does not have the necessary
Yeah,
usable
Amanda,
right away?
Yeah, Amanda, why don't you go to slide 24? Oh, yeah, okay. So we could apply and you can't see my mouse.
I'll point, you talk.
Okay, so everything with the pink section is where the right of way gets really constrained. And because there's an open ditch, basically between, west of Sapphire. And so, and you could apply all of the concepts A, B, and C to the east of Sapphire. And then, as an interim, what we're suggesting, concept D, is to, remove the sidewalk on the south side of the street, basically between Sapphire and 19. And then once the ditch is, if the ditch were to be covered, it would make it, an easy retrofit to come in and add the sidewalk later. And Scott has his hand up, I see, and he's going to probably clarify something for me.
No, I was just going to let you and Amanda and Smita know that I know a lot of people have questions about the intersection project. I don't want to take over the meeting. I did put my email in the chat. So if anybody has questions regarding the Whitney-Wolford intersection, feel free to email me any questions you have and I'll get back to you.
I appreciate that.
Thank you, Scott.
Ginger, did that answer your question?
Well, can we say, we agree with you on D. We understand what you're saying with D. I get it.
Yeah.
I agree with you totally. Can we have D and then the rest of the road be one of the A, B, or C? Okay, that's what I was trying to clarify.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, and as far as the
Absolutely.
voting, so when we get to the voting option, you'll only be able to technically select one, but if you just let me know in the chat, you're on board with D as well, then that'll happen.
Thank you.
We will account that. And so I know there's been a couple other questions. I'm just trying to keep track of them in the comments in the chat box. And so there is a question, just about staying informed about this project. So at the end of this, we will just provide, there is a project website that you can type in. So if you type in, like Google Pinellas County Whitney Road, that'll pop up, and we can also provide the link. But anytime we have opportunities to collect outreach and feedback, as well as the registration and date for our next public meeting too, that will be end of April. All of that information will be on that project website. And then we do have a couple of comments regarding the planned apartments that are going in at Whitney Road and US 19. And so, as I mentioned earlier, we took a look at the existing transportation data and as far as demand on the existing roadway and demand in the future. And right now, even with considering that apartment going in, this roadway meets the demand as is. So there's no intended widening. And so with the purpose of these multimodal improvements is to make a more incentivized reason for people to get out of their cars along the corridor and help alleviate some of that congestion within the corridor. So not everybody's just, sitting in their cars. And I can say, it's congestion is relative. I know being a resident on that roadway, it can be frustrating when you're trying to get out or make a turn. But just the couple times that we've been out there, even during peak hours, there might be like little clusters of cars and backups in certain areas, but overall the roadway operates pretty efficiently and it's pretty smooth. So again, just some feedback. If you again just want to take a look at the existing conditions presentation that we put together and just to better understand some of that transportation data analysis, please watch that and then reach out to us if you have any additional questions. All right. Okay.
Yeah, we had one question in the chat about Long Branch Creek, and is that what you were addressing in the chat, Scott?
Yes, yeah,
Okay.
I responded to that, and I think that was Taylor. Yeah, Taylor, if you have any additional questions, email me and I'll get you all the information.
Okay. All right.
Can we review just briefly concepts A, B, and C, and D, just a quick run through?
Yeah, we can run through them again just visually, and then when we get to the voting portion, I do just have some little hints to remind you of what you're actually voting for. And so let's just go to that again. So this is the continuation of the planned Wolford Road intersection improvements. So this one has the dual paved shoulders that can be used for bicyclists, as well as a 5-foot sidewalk on both sides. Concept B is more bike focused, and so this one gives a dedicated bike lane with a buffer between the travel lanes and the bicycle lanes. Concept C gives you a buffer between the sidewalk and the paved shoulders where the bicycle can utilize. So and then, like we said, concept D is an interim strategy. So again, if this is something that you're good with between, Sapphire and US 19, and you think that this is a good option in the interim, just let us know in the chat or verbally. So with that, and we can, keep talking through these if you need a little bit more clarification, but I do want to move on to the polling. And so this is a online polling tool that we use called Poll Everywhere. And so there's 2 ways that you can respond to this poll. So if you're on your laptop or a tablet, you can go to pollev.com/truetrain007. And Chase, maybe you can write that in the chat and just drop that in there for folks. So you can respond that way, or if you want to respond with your cell phone, which is usually the easier option, you can text the number 22333 to the word True Train 007, no space. And then once you do that, you will get a message that says, hey, you're in this survey. It might say like Caroline or Amanda survey. And at that point, then you can either type in the letter A, B, C, or D. And so
Can
if
you
you
go
have
over that
any,
again, please?
and again, if you have any issues using the website, the texting, we can go old school, just drop your A, B, C, D into the chat and we'll collect it that way. This is just again, we want to offer a variety of options to gather feedback from you all. So
Can you repeat those instructions one more time, Amanda?
yeah,
please?
and also
Thank
if you
you.
are viewing the screen, they're also at the top there. So from the website, you can go to pollev.com/truetrain007, so 007, and that'll take you to the website. All right, we got somebody that voted. Somebody figured it out. Okay, or you can text 22333 with the words True Train 007. And after that, you can type in A, B, C, or D.
And if you want to copy and paste the link, I dropped it in the chat, if that's easier for you than just typing it.
Thank you. Thanks, Jace. And again, if you just need some clarification before you make your vote, just feel free to raise your hand and we can do that. I won't be able to flip back to the previous slide right now just because this is rolling and live, but we can talk through them. Okay. All right, and is there anybody that has not voted yet that wants to vote? I just want to make sure I'm giving.
Yes, I want to vote. I'm trying to get in on the.
Okay, perfect. No worries. I can't see a total of how many voted. I just see percentages, so I can't tell how many of the participants voted.
We could give everybody another couple minutes, just
Yep.
kind of let them be comfortable and figure it out.
Yep. Well, Gus, I think you're drawing on the screen. Are you trying to vote for one of them?
Jill has left a message saying that I didn't vote. I need more time on the visuals. That's totally fine, Jill. If you need a copy of the presentation, I can send it to you if you need time to review it and think about it, and then let us know. That's also fine.
Yep. Okay, it looks like the votes are slowing down. And if you did not get a chance to drop this in again, I will have one more opportunity for you all to provide feedback to us, and you can also do so in the chat at any time. Okay. Okay, and just some other items that we just wanted to cover. So again, just making sure that what we've discussed, we realize that the Wolford Road intersection, was started before this Whitney Road Complete Streets project. So just making sure that we're being mindful of coordinating with that team and ensuring that the project elements that they are proposing align with the concepts that we are proposing. Frank already talked about this, but again, just other things to consider. So the future filling in of the ditches, that will obviously provide more usable right of way that could provide more sidewalks on the south side. So again, that's a consideration that we just want to be aware of. And then just to address, just kind of brainstorming and thinking of ways that we could address some of the issues with Datsko Park and the parking overflow. So we realize that parking lot is a bit constrained. It can get very busy, especially in the afternoons when people are playing basketball and doing other things or walking at the park. And so I know that we noticed that there's a lot of cars that park along the right of way. And so one of the things that we wanted to explore that wouldn't necessarily, we wouldn't have to, necessarily build more infrastructure or capacity, is maybe there's a potential for a shared parking lot agreement with Tech Data, since they do have that large parking lot. Again, no discussions have been made at this time, but just wanted to explore something and just kind of brainstorm some ideas. And I see, Jill, you have your hand up.
Hi, thank you.
Yes.
I am very grateful for everything that you're doing on the Whitney Road Corridor project to make it just more easy to travel on foot and bike and everything. My question that I posted in the chat room, I saw that B was the big winner. I wanted to go back and look at the visuals because my concern is if everyone's voting for B, does that mean that if our trees in the Arbor Trace area are taken away to make room for more sidewalks, to make room for that bike path, does everyone realize, and I don't know what the answer is to this, but I don't know that people would have voted for B if they understood, if it's true that would take away our trees by allowing for more bike paths and more sidewalk space. Can you elaborate on that? Thank you.
Thanks, Jill. So right now we are only in the early planning stages. So I can only speak to our concepts. I can't speak to, we don't have engineer design drawings. So we don't have any specific trees that would be impacted by the concepts that we're proposing. All I can say is what Scott said earlier. If you've, coordinated with him already on his section of the project, and if they have identified certain landscaping that might be affected. But at this time, we just have, these are just planning concepts. So again, we don't have specific trees that we know would be impacted.
Right. And that's my only point. My point is everyone that voted for B, it's like, be careful what you're voting for, because if that means cutting down trees, I think the vote would be different. That's the point I'm trying to make.
Okay. Yep. I completely understand. And we've noted that.
Thank you.
All right. And Corey?
Hi. I joined a little late, but as I'm looking at this with filling of ditches, I also would be concerned about water. So I don't know if that has any bearing on what happens, right? Because those ditches are used for water management when we have rain. And so I want to make sure there's considerations there. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Okay. And I think this is a good opportunity. So again, we'll just kind of move into a more, kind of open. So same thing. So if you already were able to get into the poll EV through text or through the website, you don't have to rejoin. You can just submit your considerations and options. And so we have everything in the chat. So if you put it in the chat, you don't need to repeat it on the screen. But if you wanted to provide feedback and you didn't feel comfortable getting on the mic, or you didn't want to put it in the chat, you can put it here and it'll be completely anonymous. So I'll give you all some time just to kind of collect your thoughts, and if there's any considerations or other things you would like to see, or if there's other things that you would like us to explain better, just let us know. And then Frank,
Yeah, Amanda, I just wanted to address the last question, because And Scott, maybe you need to follow up behind me, but the ditches wouldn't be filled. I mean, there would be pipes, to move the water for stormwater management, and then covered. So it's not that they're being filled without provisions for water. Is that right, Scott?
Yes, that's correct. The areas where we're filling ditches, there will be pipes under the shallow swales. We also had our engineer run a complete model update, and there's no adverse impacts. There will be no rise. So there's no flooding today. There shouldn't be in the future.
Thank you.
All right, so not seeing any responses in the screen. I still see a couple items coming in through the chat. But again, I'll just take this time, if you have any additional thoughts or feedback for consideration, if you want to raise your hand, we can do that at this time.
On the stormwater management that was just mentioned, Scott is anticipating putting in some kind of culverts and some management underneath the roadways. The issue is on the south side, if you put in stormwater management, RCP pipe, whatever you're thinking of doing, culverts, whatever, that's going to drain down to the corner of Whitney Road and 19, or is it going to be draining for stormwater management into the easements between properties?
Everything being placed as part of the Whitney-Wolford intersection project, all that water where we're piping the ditches, that will flow down to Long Branch Creek. So that won't go into any easements, and it won't go to 19. It will go to the existing creek that we're actually improving along with the project.
Okay, so if we're able to infill the south side of Whitney Road near Aaron Place, which is a big congested area several times during the day, it's very congested right there. The question is, now you've got the Land Tower Apartments going in, and they have Swift Mud permits, but their discharge is from their holding pond, because they have our tanks underneath the parking lots for water retention, but their discharge is going into a lake or into a holding pond that's discharging into the ditch. So you've got more impervious surface. Well, you'll have same impervious surface, a little bit more, but you'll also have more potential water runoff into that area. And if we don't have it designed right, we're going to end up with issues in this portion of Whitney Road. I've been here since 1998, and I've seen it when it's full.
Yeah, and that area it's outside of the limits of my project. It's to the east or to the west, but that will be something when they get to the design phase of this complete streets. The stormwater management will be looked at in great detail.
Okay, who's going to, are those documents going to be accessible to everybody prior to a meeting like this, so we can all review it before we get to the meeting?
Bart, this is Smita. Yes, it would be, but what we are currently doing is the initial part. So it's like the beginning part of the project. So we are developing concept drawings. So it's mostly a planning process, but the engineering drawing, the design would be done after this project gets over. But, we could create a mailing list. You would have our email address. You could reach out to us. When we get to that stage, then we would also go through the same kind of a public outreach process. So you would have access to those drawings.
Okay, so you're going to send out to everybody those email addresses to get that information.
Yeah, so if you could, so there were quite a few comments regarding this. We don't have a mailing list for this project. There are a few, including you, who have reached out to us. about the project. So that's how I have your email addresses, but we don't have, and I sent out emails to each one of you when we set up the meeting, but I don't have an email list. So if you could share your email address within the chat, I can create a mailing list. However, just to clarify, what we're working on is a planning project. So once it reaches the next stage, then it would be dealt by a different department, not us. However, we would have a mailing list. So it would not go, and whichever stage the project is, it would go through an outreach process, a public outreach process like this, and you would have access to those drawings.
Okay, so you'll send out links to those drawings.
Yes. Not me, but whoever would be working on that stage. So our project ends in June. And it will take a while for it to get into the design and engineering drawings.
Okay. So, so then if your engineering drawings finish in June and someone had asked the potential schedule, when is it going out for pricing? And then when do you anticipate entering contract and then starting work?
So what we finish in June are actually concept drawings, they're not engineering drawings. After that, we'll have to start the process to move towards engineering drawings and design. So that happens after June, but we would require to look for funding for the rest of the stages of the project.
Okay. So you can let everybody know about your potential anticipated schedule of finishing the design, going out for pricing, and then moving ahead and anticipated duration of the project.
Yes, so once once this project gets over and once we have funding to move on to the next stages, whoever's working on the project would go through the same process like this. So they would reach out to the community and those things would be shared. The schedule would be shared.
Okay. All right, that's what we're looking for.
Yeah, thank you. And I would appreciate if each one of you, some of you, I already have your email address and Amanda also has it. But if you have not been in touch with me before this, I don't have it. So if you could just leave your email address in the chat, I can create a mailing list. And so that would be very beneficial for us because we'd be doing a second round of public outreach at the end of April.
Yep. And Jill, I do see your hand up.
Yes, so I have the same concerns that the gentleman just spoke expressed. I certainly don't know anything about stormwater management, but some of the concerns that he voiced now are my concerns as well. I live in a stilt townhome in Arbor Trace and the seawall ends behind my building, so there is no seawall. So during any typical Florida 5 p.m. rainstorm, the seawall that doesn't exist, the Long Branch Creek behind my home overflows. There is no backyard. I've got nothing in my garage because of it floods during a typical 5 p.m. rainstorm. So I just want everyone to be aware of that. We've got these retention ponds that Long Branch Creek, I think, feed into, and the retention pond overflows regularly. And it's like flash flooding at my house. You know, I'm rolling up my pants barefoot, trudging through water to get to my home because retention ponds from Long Branch Creek are overflowing. So I would just hope, not knowing anything about stormwater, I want to make sure whatever the stormwater process is doing, you're aware of all of the issues we in Arbor Trace, myself and my neighbors, have with flooding. I've seen my neighbors with sandbags in their driveways because regular rain events in Florida cause problems for us from Long Branch Creek. So I just want you to be aware of that, please. Thank you.
Have you all done water modeling? Have you done water modeling for the area?
So Scott has done that for his project, which is what he mentioned for his project, because his project is has been designed. Again, ours is just initial planning concepts. So this does not get into the engineering and the modeling yet until we come to a finalized concept.
Okay, so you got to still have to do water modeling so you know where the water's flowing and then do anticipated overacts of the retention ponds to take on the new water. I guess the outfall structures are out there someplace to take that water. But the whole deal of it is you got to do the water modeling to know where the water's coming from.
You have all the rest.
No, I didn't.
Correct. Okay. All right, I'm gonna move on. It looks like, okay. So again, just to reiterate, so the wiki map that I mentioned is still open for comments. So if there are specific places where you see, you know, if you didn't get a chance to comment on this yet, feel free to go. Catherine, are you trying to talk or are you just unmuted on accident?
I'm sorry.
That's okay. All right. And so like we said, we're going to take everything in that we received from this meeting and review, refine, and come up with some potentially revised concepts based on the feedback that we've heard. And so that'll be what we're doing over the next couple of weeks leading into April. We will have our second public meeting to discuss the preferred alternative concept in late April. We don't have a date confirmed yet, but we are working on that on our side. So as soon as we know the date and time, we will have that posted on the project website, as well as let you all know that provided your email addresses. And so as we previously mentioned, the final project report for this planning project will be in June 2023. And so that will be the end of the planning portion of this project before it moves into a design and engineering phase. And so Scott already dropped his information into the chat, but here it is again in case you need it. Additionally, this is the link to Scott's Whitney Road and Wolford Road project website. And so if you want that, that's that website. Additionally, if you would like to contact Smitha or me outside of this meeting regarding any thoughts, any additional questions that you might have had on this project, both of our emails are on the screen, and again, they'll all be included in this presentation. And so with that, we do have a little bit of extra time. So, you know, if there are any additional final thoughts, or Smitha, Frank, Scott, anybody wants to chime in, we do have time. So.
Yeah, I'd like to add that if you have additional comments, please feel free to reach out to me or Amanda. Also, I hope you have left your email addresses in this. I will send out, if in case it helps, some of you have expressed the need to look at the PowerPoint and the visuals again. I can send that to you. So if Amanda, if you could send me a copy of the final PowerPoint, and then we can send it to everyone.
Yep, that sounds good. Okay.
Oh, and one more thing. I noticed there were some comments regarding how between the options, they picked one, but they had comments about some others. So if there are, like, for example, the comment about the trees. So if that option is not a viable option when it comes to the trees, is there a second option that you would prefer? If there are comments like those, I would appreciate, once you look at the PowerPoint, please email back to us.
Yeah, and I just want to say thank you to everybody. This perspective, the perspectives that you're sharing are really helpful.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Great. If there's no other comments, or it looks like the chat's slowing down. So yeah, so again, just thank you for taking time out of your evening. I know we're getting close to dinner time, and so just want to thank you all again. So we will go through all of the chat information. I'll go through registrations and just make sure we have a good list for all of your emails and those of you that attended. And if you know, if there's others that weren't able to attend this meeting that you have their email address, feel free to forward that to us as well. And so we're going to take everything that you gave us, take a look at the concepts that we have proposed, and then based on your feedback, we will do it. And Dawn, rewatch the video, this presentation, or did you mean the existing conditions presentation that I mentioned? Okay, I'm not sure.
I think she means this presentation.
Okay. Yep. Yeah. So we have this recorded, yes, Dawn, this meeting is being recorded. So we will let you know, the best way to view it. And we can do that. So again, thank you all for joining us this evening, and we will be in touch, on the next public meeting at the end of April. So thank you all.
Thank you,
so much,
Amanda. Thank
everyone.
you, Smitha. Thank you, Frank and Scott.
Thank you all.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, everyone, for taking our time for this. Thank you.
All right.
Yeah, thank you.